Do you know why your grandfather moved to New Mexico?
He was a pretty good tease. And I'll tell you the story he told us. And I've heard him tell this story before. And he said he went there because of health problems. And he'd kind of lay that on the table, and then pretty soon someone would say, well, Ed, what was your health problem? He said, I was hungry. I was hungry. They had, my father was born in Turkey, Texas. And now, until NC bought that farm for my granddad in Los Lunas, they basically were always on rented property. They rented a farm. They leased a farm, share basis or something like that. But he was at Turkey, Texas. And I'll back up on that. Turkey, Texas. And they moved to New Mexico, to Roswell, and then on down to Hagerman. And this was in 1903. My dad was 1 year old. And I can remember grandmother talking about coming off the Caprock, west of Roswell, and driving the cattle down through the Caprock. And she had 3 children with her. Little Mamie was 2 or 3 years old. Prof would have been about 4, and of course my dad was just a baby. And Granddaddy was driving the cattle, and they anyway in the camp there, camping one night while they were coming down the Caprock, and that's about a 12 or 15 mile, pretty rugged drop off there. A rattlesnake came into the camp, and grandmother had a pot of boiling water cooking over the coke stove, and they talked about her pouring water on that rattlesnake, killing that rattlesnake with boiling water. And Dottie asked me, well, did they eat the rattlesnake? I don't know, but I have an idea that back in those days they probably skinned that rattlesnake, and they ate pretty good meat anyway. So, and he had a livery stable in Roswell, and then homesteaded at Hagerman in the Pecos Valley, and they were there about 3 years, or maybe 4 years, and of course at that time in the Pecos Valley the big thing was artesian wells. You could drill a well and the water would bubble up. You didn't pump wells before pumps, and he's put a lot of money into drilling an artesian well, or a couple of them, and he never did get an artesian well. Never did get water that would come up. And basically, financially, then he went back to Texas, and that's when they went to McCargo. But in the wintertime, he had his mules, and he would work his Fresnos on road construction jobs. And I had a picture that I got from Cedar Rapids one time for that Armstrong and Armstrong, and this would have been west of Roswell. There were mules and Fresnos there, and they were bringing gravel up to the, well, it was a jaw crusher and a screening plant. It happened to be a Cedar Rapids jaw and screen is the reason they had it, and but they were feeding that with those Fresnos and Polo mules. And I know that Granddaddy worked for Armstrong. That would have been Gale Armstrong back in that period of time.
Now, what's a Fresno? Describe what a Fresno is. A wagon?
Well, Fresno was like a big, like a
V-shape?
a snow shovel. only it maybe would hold a quarter of a cubic yard, and it was horses would pull this, and all it was a big scoop, and there was a long handle that came out behind it, and so you would, the operator driving the horses would then scoop that, how much bite he would tip that kind of scoop down to get a load, and as soon as he got it full of material, then you'd lean back on that handle and you'd tip it up, and it would be sliding on the bottom, and the horses would go off and pull it to where you, and then when you went to dump it, you just trip that handle and it came over towards the horses. Now the problem with it, if you were a novice at it, and I've done this as a kid, you were lowering that shovel down, the horses are pulling it, and you get into a rock or something that's hard that doesn't give, well then that bucket would flip over the other way. Well, those men knew to turn loose of it. The first time I was a kid running one of those, I didn't know to turn loose of it. It flipped me over on the horses. That only happens one time, and then you learn if it's going to go, let it go type thing. But that's where all the dirt was moved with Fresnos and horses.